Hi, welcome back to Vondel Pete. Now in today's video we're going to talk about how I became unstoppable. Now I'm sure a lot of people looking at this video right now will be thinking to themselves, I could stop this guy. He doesn't look very unstoppable. And you know what, they probably could. I'm not going to deny that. Now to be unstoppable, a lot of people think of that as being like hardworking, achieving your goals. And that's all very commendable. And I really admire people who are unstoppable. But no, I'm more unstoppable when it comes to being in a job where you're about to be maybe given a promotion, or at least there's a hint of a promotion. I'm unstoppable in that sense, where I will tell them that I quit at exactly that moment. So the first time I did this, I was 25 years old, and they asked me if I wanted to go into some sort of management position, and I laughed and said no. I didn't like outright laugh, but I smirked and said no. So shock horror, I lost that job within a few months. They didn't like me anymore. I'd actually booked a flight to Frankfurt just before they had fired me because I was going to quit just before I flew overseas. That was my whole thing. I thought, I'm going to use that as an excuse when I told them I have to quit. What am I going to say? Like, well, I don't want to confront the situation and say, I hate this job. I wanted to say, oh, I'm quitting because I'm going to fly to Frankfurt and stay there forever. I didn't exactly stay in Frankfurt. I don't really like Frankfurt that much. And that was one of the first tastes I had of being unstoppable. And then what happened is I was in a full-time job for a few more years in a different job. And I wasn't the highest performer, but my team leader liked me. And he said to me, am I interested maybe in managerial positions? And he told me that I've got good communication skills. And it was at that point that once again I was so unstoppable that I told him that I'm going to quit because I don't want to work here anymore. And he looked a little bit upset, but then I told him actually I'm going to go and move to Japan. And that changes the narrative, and then he doesn't feel hurt anymore. He just thinks, oh, that's cool. He's going to go and live in Japan. Peter's a kind of bohemian arty guy. That's something he would do. Of course, once I was in Japan and I was living this sort of free life, living off my savings, it came to a point where I felt shackled by my carefree lifestyle. And, you know, there was this job even that was really good for me in Japan, like a teaching job, where they needed an Australian to teach Japanese people part-time in my part of Tokyo, so it would have been easy to get to on a train. I mean, what a perfect job that would have been, like someone to teach about Australian culture to Japanese people. But of course I was so unstoppable that I didn't take that opportunity. And then I ended up going back to Australia. I told myself, come on, Peter, real freedom is working in your hometown for the government in a job that you don't like, with people that you don't necessarily like either. And that's what I did for quite a long time after that. So I think you can already see in this version of being unstoppable, my version of being unstoppable being don't get tied down to anything. You can see that there's pros and cons, I think, to this approach in life. And when the lockdowns finished here in Australia, because this is the end of 2021, and there was the first flight after years of our borders being closed. There was actually a flight to London, and I booked the flight, and I knew that on that day when that flight goes, I'm going to quit this job that I'm in. And it happened again, where the team leader sat me down. He's been quite nice to me. He wants to train me up and advance me. And I told him I quit, and he was a bit hurt. But I did tell him I'm going to move to London, and that was a great narrative for everyone in the office. They all thought Peter's moving to London like it's 1968, and he's going to pursue his goals of, I don't know, performing in the West End. I don't know what narrative. I heard things that people thought that I was going to appear in a play. I didn't say anything to anyone. I don't know what goes on in people's minds. But what happened was, so I did fly to London, and I quit my job and I flew to London. There was a goodbye email sent to everyone in the office that Paul, because they called me Paul for some reason, Paul's living. He's flying away, and they had a picture of an eagle soaring through the sky. And actually for years I heard that people kept asking, how am I going in London? Is he famous yet? I actually flew to London, and I left London within 4 hours. You know, I got so bored, I was so unstoppable that I was only in London for a few hours, got my tests done, because, you know, you had to do those tests all the time back in 2021. Got myself to Germany, got to Berlin. I was so unstoppable. And then I was so unstoppable in Berlin because I really wanted to get myself a European Union QR code that would allow me to sit in restaurants and cafes. Because, you know, again, late 2021, you couldn't do things without QR codes and stuff. And I'm going around Berlin trying to go to different pharmacists, telling them, here's my Australian certificate. Can you convert this into an EU certificate and give me the QR code? And they kept saying no. Like, one of the women at the pharmacy said that we actually pay our taxes to people who have got, I can't remember what it was, I don't know what the problem was, but she wouldn't issue me the QR code. It was quite rude and upsetting, but I was unstoppable. And I faked a whole itinerary actually to the Swiss government online, and they needed all this evidence. I had to produce all of this evidence that I was going to stay in this hotel in Zurich, really expensive hotel. Luckily, I was able to get a refund. So I booked it knowing I could get a free refund. Eventually, they gave me a European Union certificate made in Switzerland that I was able to put in my phone. As soon as I got that, I left Berlin, bye-bye Berlin, took a train to Prague. And I still remember going into that, I don't think it was Starbucks, but it was some sort of cafe. I hope it wasn't Cafe Nero, but I was in a cafe in Prague, and I remember showing them my European Union QR code proudly and sitting in a cafe and drinking a coffee and thinking, wow, look at me. Now, around this time, I was so unstoppable, though, that I nearly passed out a lot. Like when I was in Berlin the night before, I was walking around trying to find food, trying to find somewhere to stay. I got myself a hotel, so I just needed food at this point, and I nearly passed out because I just quit my job, flown to London, flown to Berlin, and I think I was just going to pass out. I was doing too much. I was too unstoppable. I actually had to lean on a kebab truck. It was near the Tiergarten in Berlin. If you've been to Berlin, you might know there's like an area with a lot of kebab trucks and stuff. And the Tiergarten's huge. Anyway, it was the southern end. And I'm, nearly passing out, and I'm holding onto a kebab truck, trying not to pass out. And I eventually regained my bearings, went to a supermarket, got some water, got a sandwich, went back to my hotel room, sculled a beer, passed out. Woke up in the morning, got myself across the border into the Czech Republic. And even Prague, I was so unstoppable. I was like, no, what is my goal? Why did I quit my job? Why am I here? It was all up in the air. And I realized it was because I wanted to go to Český Krumlov, which is this beautiful Bohemian town. See, I'm a Bohemian, right? So I've got to go to Bohemia. And I went to Český Krumlov, and because it was that era, late 2021 November, I was able to get myself a cheap apartment, which was 2 stories, and I just stayed there for 5 days. And also because I knew I was being unstoppable, I kept nearly passing out. It happened in Prague as well. You know, in the main town square in Prague where there's the clock. I nearly passed out there too. I just kept getting dizzy all the time. So by the time I got to the town of Český Krumlov and stayed in a apartment, that feeling did go away, and I stopped. I forced myself to stop. So many things were closed at the time. It was a very quiet place to be. It was very eerie in a really great way. I used to do walks around the moat. I would wake up at 5 in the morning because I was still jet lagged, and I would just write in the morning, and I was living a life that I wanted to live because I was so unstoppable. But of course, something always comes along and stops you. In this case, I was in the Czech Republic, and I was going to go to some other towns in the Czech Republic, and I was going to go maybe to Slovakia. But I did get this message from someone I knew, and I ended up flying to Turkey to meet their autistic cat. Well, I don't think that the cat had autism, but her auntie said that the cat possibly had autism. The cat was a little bit strange, but I thought the cat was charming. It just had a very funny meow. It was a real buzzing meow. So that was a time that I did have to stop again. And it was a good time to stop, actually, because as I said, it forced me to slow down. It forced me to become a bit more human. It forced me to think about what I actually want to do. And it was a pretty good experience. I ended up missing one of my flights, but I did end up in Sarajevo afterwards, and I had a great time just again walking around Sarajevo, not doing any activities, not seeing any museums, or maybe I saw one museum, and that was my slowing down. And anyway, that's the story of how I became unstoppable, how it led me to nearly passing out in a square in Berlin, and how I learned that sometimes you do need to stop and sometimes you need to be unstoppable. It really depends on the situation. Let me know in the comments if you've ever felt unstoppable in any way. And yeah, I'll see you next time.